Shane Stacks on the radio.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Shall we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Getting geeky in Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is the first live show we've had in a few weeks. I've been doing pre-recorded shows and had a couple of replays, but here on Saturday, May 16th at 1 p.m. Central, we are live on the airwaves via the magical electrons of Skype. So we've got a great show today. We're going to be geeking it up on RPGs and D&D and all that. I've got a follow-up guest that I talked to last on the show in December of 2018. So we're going to get a follow-up there. And he does really interesting work in researching the history of D&D and RPGs. And it's not John Peterson. I love John Peterson a lot. But it's somebody different who has researched an area of where D&D and RPGs came from that has not gotten a lot of coverage, honestly. So anyway, I should hopefully have him on the phone. Griff, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here. I'm just listening to you introduce the show.
Yay. All right. So that's Griffith Morgan. He is one of two creators behind the Secrets of Blackmoor, the True History of D&D documentary. And way back in the day, Griff and his partner. Let's give some love to your partner's name. Who's the partner you had with you on this project?
Chris Graves.
Okay, Chris
Chris
Graves.
is my buddy. Chris and I are just kind of buddies, and we just like to do cool things. And I don't know. We just sort of ended up making a D&D documentary by accident,
Yeah, I was reading an update from you recently, and you said that there's several D&D documentaries underway, but somehow you managed to be the first out the gate because, in your own words, you were too stupid to know any better. So congratulations on fumbling your way without knowing what you were getting into and somehow managing to be the first out. And there's some of the other documentaries out there. There's some good people behind the scenes. They just run into delays. At least one of them has run into some weird legal issues. So we're not dissing them, but congratulations on being the first out the gate. I got to real quick, Griff, I got to check in with my boy, John. I haven't talked to him in a while. He's running the scenes. John, man, what's up, big guy?
How's it going, man? How's life on the other side of town, I guess?
On the other side of the plastic screen,
yes,
that is at all the places you go to now.
You're not behind the glass. You're behind the fiber optics. I guess that's how we call it now.
Yeah, I'm behind, and the antivirus software is busily scrubbing any COVID that it finds coming through the Skype connection. So maybe that's John Payne. John, give a quick shout out for your. This is the conversation, or I know you were retooling it a little bit.
Yes,
what's going on right now?
We're trying our best to keep it alive. It is the Conversation Project, and the podcast is called The Weekly Wrap Up from This Is Conversation. Yes, way too long. But coming out sometime this afternoon after I put some finishing touches of it, you'll find out about the top 10 stories of the week that the people crowdsourced told me which were the top 10 stories. I didn't go to Fox News. I didn't go to CNN. I didn't call up Dan Rather to see what he thought about it. I talked to the people, and they told me what the top 10 stories were this week, the most conversational. You'll find out about them by going to thisisconversation.com and clicking on the feeds and finding the podcast.
I love it, man. Stay at it. So quick announcement, and then we'll move into the show. I first started broadcasting on air May 30th, 2015. And so it's been almost 5 years. And this May 30th, now Shane Plays Geek Talk will keep going. But for the time being, this May 30th will be the last radio broadcast of Shane Plays Geek Talk. So it's going to be a very clean, even 5 years. It's been amazing. Again, I love talk radio. Shane Plays Geek Talk. I wanted to be a talk radio. I did it for 5 years, and a lot of shows don't go anywhere near that long. So I'm blessed to have gone that long and had a lot of fun. It's been an experiment along the way to have Geek Talk Radio on the airwaves. But for the time being anyway, I'm going to go over to podcast format only. So if you want to keep up with the show when you've only been listening by radio, go out there and look for Shane Plays Geek Talk on like iTunes or Stitcher or Podbean, Google Play Music. And you can go to shaneplays.com. I always post the podcast there. So Shane Plays isn't going anywhere as far as going out as a regular show. But if you want to keep up with it, at the end of this month, May 30th will be the last radio broadcast for the time being. And 5 years it just blows my mind. I've been doing this for 5 years. But anyway, enough of that. Let's get on with the show. Griff, what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about Secrets of Blackmoor, the True History of D&D. And I know that, you're wanting to talk about RPG stuff in general, and you did a lot of promotion online. I really appreciate you doing that. But I do want to give you a chance to give you an update, or for you to give an update. Now, when we talked in December of 2018, what I did was, because I didn't have the slot on my show schedule to do a radio show with you, we did a special podcast. And I'm going to link it in the show notes for when the show goes out by podcast on YouTube and everything. It'll be in the show notes, but you can go to shaneplays.com if people want to hear that. And I did a podcast extra on Secrets of Blackmoor, True History of Dungeons and Dragons. And we talk about everything. We talk about D&D. We talk about old computer systems. We talk about, what is it? It's not Elite. Well, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what the computer game you played.
Empire game? Was it the Empire game on the Cyber One?
Empire. That's it. Yeah, we really cover a lot of ground. Which tickled, because I'm big into retro computing, and I mean that's beyond retro computing. We're talking about mainframe days and some of the early games there, but we also covered a lot of ground with the history of D&D and role-playing games. And I want to set this up. Now Griff I'm going to give him a platform to say whatever he wants. I'll frame it this way. There is a contingent of people out there that like to put Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in a jar like a couple of crawdads and shake it up and try to get them to fight. And that's not what I want to do. What I like to do is I like to acknowledge that both Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax are crucially important to D&D being out there as we know it, and the hobby of role-playing games. Now,
that's the way
more often than not, if you say who invented Dungeons and Dragons, the general populace will say Gary Gygax, because that's the narrative that's made it into pop culture. Most gamers that are into the hobby know that Dave Arneson was really important. And what Griff and his co-creator did, they went deep on Dave Arneson and his gaming group out of the Twin Cities, which was known as the Blackmoor Group, their contribution to role-playing. And Gary came along and picked up the baton and helped carry it and refine it and get it out there at a certain point. But long before Gary, Dave Arneson and his group were basically inventing role-playing. And this is what the documentary Secrets of Blackmoor, The True History of Dungeons and Dragons focuses on. So at the time, back in December of 2018, I was like, I can't work into the show, but this is a super important topic. You were raising funds on Kickstarter. So I did that podcast extra with you. And I said, after your documentary is released, I'll have you on the show. The documentary's been out for a while. I've seen it. It's excellent. And now Griff, take this opportunity to give us an update or say whatever you want about the documentary, why people should see it, et cetera.
Well, you kind of said it there, it's history now, and people still get I don't know. Probably somewhere there's somebody arguing that that George Washington was actually a bad guy and the British should have taken over America. I mean, there's going to be an opinion on either side of things, but if you're looking at history, it's something that already happened. So we didn't really want to dig into that whole battle between Dave and Gary, because that was actually kind of a smokescreen that had a lot to do with ownership of properties. It happens with a lot of companies. You have like two founding people, and maybe one guy had the idea, the other guy polished the idea and was more of a business person. And so then they want to get rid of the original inventor because they don't want to pay him a salary or anything. And so you get fights over rights, And that's not really the interesting story, you know. So we just started to dig into how the heck did these guys invent role-playing? And then we sort of wanted to figure out, well, what is role-playing? Because people don't really understand what it is. So that's really what the movie is about. Some people complain we don't talk enough about Gary Gygax, but I will say, I mean, this is kind of like, you know, people are going to be screaming and probably sending me hate emails if I say this, but Gary Gygax did not invent role-playing. What he did was he worked with Dave Arneson, and they created a game called Dungeons and Dragons, which was the first role-playing game. And so what we do is we just go back before Dungeons and Dragons, and we follow the path of invention within this group of gamers in the Twin Cities, and all the way up to when Gary Gygax appears, and Gygax, I got to say Gygax, or I'll get harassment for that too, until Gygax appears, and then Gygax is part of it too, you know?
Yeah.
So that's,
well, they
pretty
both
much
have an
the
important
story.
role, you know, and talking about the Gygax versus Gygax, a lot of the documentary is interviewing either the people that are still alive that were part of Dave Arneson's gaming group, or people that knew, you know, daughter, you know, people that were immediately knew them. And a lot of them say Gygax, at least one or two say Gygax. And so I guess, you know, up in that area, the Twin Cities, you know, maybe that's how they pronounced it. But yeah, that I was like, oh, I've never heard it pronounced that way before. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the case is made. Now, I'm not talking about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm talking about role playing, and the elements, the basic primordial elements of role playing. I think the case is made very clearly. I think it's hard to argue against it that role playing came out of the Twin Cities, the Blackmoor group, right? And this includes people like Dave McGarry, who created the Dungeon board game. Wesley, it's not John Wesley, David Wesley, right?
It's David Wesley, yeah.
Yeah. David Wesley, who is I mean, a few people know who he is, but this guy contributed so much. And then he was also doing cool stuff, like he came up with a Zaxxon game and stuff like that. So he's just a very, very interesting.
Wesley's off the hook genius boy. When we were in the Twin Cities like a year ago, we recorded. He gave a lecture on how to do cold fusion. He thinks he knows how to do it. You know, I mean, that's a big deal, right? It's like, sure, you invented role playing, but then you also think you know how to do cold fusion.
Cold fusion, yeah. The role playing was the hobby. You know, well, the genius part of his hobby. And early in the hobby, now it still happens, but early in the hobby, role-playing and wargaming tended to attract those very highly intelligent engineer type minds, you know, because there was a lot, you know, a lot more to the math was emphasized, especially in the war games. But yeah, you had David Wesley, you had Dave Arneson, you had some other names in there, and they were war gamers first. And I don't want to steal all the thunder of the documentary, but on a very loose, broad strokes, they went from wargaming to they started tinkering to a war game, which in their own mad scientist way introduced the lightning that hit the clay that started coming up with role playing. And the reason it's Blackmoor is that Dave Arneson had the Blackmoor campaign.
Right. I got to jump in on you here, Shane. Because I think the big thing is kind of figuring out what role playing is. Like I talk to a lot of people, like, you know, we're both on the internet. I mean, we talk to each other on Twitter all the time. And I think I talk to you on Facebook too.
Sure.
And so you see people talking about role playing and it has been named role playing. And so people really associate the idea of like, let's just sit around the table and like, you're the wizard and I'm the fighter and we'll just like pretend like we're at the inn and we'll talk to each other like our characters. And that's role playing. Acting like your character is role playing. And, you know, it's the definition of what it is, like for the Blackmoor bunch or the MMSA players, Wesley and Arneson's friends, they called it a Brownstein. When they first started to see it as a role-playing game and something different, they would call it a Brownstein. But if you go further back in time, they just call it Strategos, which is that it's like a professional wargaming set of rules for wargaming. In the post-Civil War era, and it's a professional set of rules that was adopted by the United States military for training officers in like the 1880s. And so they, back in the 1880s, the military via Totten is exploring these ideas of role playing as far as simulating the experience of what it would be like to lead troops in battle. And so, role playing is we go on with definitions. When you look in the original Dungeons and Dragons, I think Gary Gygax first calls it like fantasy campaigns or something like that. Like the D&D rules were guidelines for running your own fantasy campaign games, and there's no mention of role playing. And then you get to about 1977 with the Holmes edition, and maybe it was somewhere else, but in the Holmes edition, most people saw the term fantasy role playing. Okay. And then it was later, I think it might have been Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or maybe in the Dragon magazine, where they first started talking about it in terms of role playing. And I mean, I remember being a teenager, and when it was still FRP, and me and my friends were playing Traveler, and it's like, well, this isn't fantasy. Is this an SFRP? What are we going to call this? And so you really have to think about the definition of what's going on when you're playing a role-playing game. And it's not just sitting around talking to each other like I'm the wizard and you're the fighter. There's a lot more going on, and there are little tiny stages where it starts to grow and become more involved,
Yeah, the terms, I mean, that's to say, especially, that's why the Blackmoor bunch, that crew, it's fascinating. And luckily, to really, truly historically document stuff. And folks, you go to the Kickstarter page for Secrets of Blackmoor or the Facebook page. There's documentation on a very scholarly level. This isn't just, it's a combination of interviewing the people who were there and then also finding documented evidence that correlates and backs up what they say. I mean, you could trace the history of what's going on.
I mean, it's storytelling. We just went out and we sat down with all the original players and we said, tell us what you did and tell us what your experiences were. And they would just tell us their stories. And most, they're all role-playing gamers. They're the original RPGers. Those guys know how to tell a story. So they would just, unload on us. The hard part was cutting it all down into a movie because we've got hundreds of hours of footage. And so if you watch the movie, most of it's just them telling their experiences. I was hanging out and then somebody came up with this crazy idea. We're going to do this thing. And it was like, okay, sounds good. We'll try it,
Right. Yeah. It was very natural and organic. And then again, what to give credit to Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson ran him in a game of Blackmoor, basically, which was, early, what we call now role playing. And to Gary's credit, now Gary and Dave both had a very strong wargaming background. They were gamers. It's not like Gary was just this businessman who came along all of a sudden. He was a gamer, and he got ran through a game of what would become Dungeons and Dragons. It was a very early version of it by Dave Arneson, and he immediately was like, "This is amazing. This is amazing." So he so Dave Arneson just wants to play games, basically. Gary Gygax wants to play games, but also be a businessman.
Well,
and
I run into that a lot, Shane. I got to stop you there.
Go ahead.
Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax were game designers together. They already had, I think by the point that the demo happens, they've already released Don't Give Up the Ship, which is their naval combat rules that they wrote together. And those are based on Arneson's rules. I mean, that's a lot like Gary would work. Gary would find people who were doing interesting things, and he'd be like, oh, let's develop your little home game here, or your game that you're putting out in fanzines to like 50 people. Let's turn it into a product. And so, that's what he did with Jeff Perrin, who did really founded Chainmail Rules. And he did the same thing with Arneson. He and Arneson got together and did their naval rules. So when Arneson shows up in the Twin Cities, or not in the Twin Cities, but in Lake Geneva with his Blackmoor game, it is a fully playable game. You are playing what is essentially D&D, just the rules might be different, but all the stuff is the same. And at the same time, there's another guy there who shows off his game, which is another dungeon game called the Dungeon Board Game, which is a fully functional prototype. It's not mass produced, but he's handmade. I think he handmade an extra copy, self-published before it was published by TSR. So you've got two dungeon games, two fantasy games on the same night, and Gary was blown away. And these guys are like, yeah, we got these games, we don't know how to sell them. We don't know anybody that wants to, that would want to publish this stuff because it's weird.
Right. Yeah, they didn't know what to do with it. Well, right. And so Gary, I've heard the same thing that, I mean, he was like blown away and was very excited. And he worked it into, I'm oversimplifying. Once Gary comes into it, he works with Dave Arneson to codify the game and focus on the rules and get a packageable version out. And then, so Gary's very important, instrumental, but, he was, when he came on the scene, there was a lot of the foundation of what was going to go on to become role-playing games was already done. Now, I'm of the opinion that if Gary hadn't come along, I'm not sure that role-playing would have made it into the pop culture landscape at the time it did. I think eventually it would have somehow. But anyway, yeah, I mean, that's just my opinion.
That's always a question. I hear a lot of historians talk about that. I was talking to, I think it was Paul Stormberg, and he was ruminating with, maybe it was Peterson and somebody else, and they were sort of saying like, without Gary, role-playing games just wouldn't have happened. And I was just like, no. The minute the concept of role-playing starts to take hold, if Gary wouldn't have met Arneson, somebody else would have latched onto Arneson's idea. Because if you look at the actual game industry, a lot of gamers don't play Tunnels and Trolls, but Tunnels and Trolls, I think, was the second RPG game that came out a year later. And so you've got Tunnels and Trolls comes out, and it doesn't have a single, aside from maybe attributes, none of the rules really match D&D rules at all. It's its own unique system, but it's still a dungeon delving fantasy adventure game. That comes out within a year, So I think it's important to realize that once the idea of role playing, once somebody experiences the format and goes, oh, it's make believe mixed with war game rules, I can do this. The sky's the limit. And so I think Gary, I don't know. I just hate to make conjecture where you want to cut Gary out or say bad things about Gary. The thing is that Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax got together and they made this thing. And when they released it, it just went crazy all over the country.
Well, I do think, and we can, shift gears into a different topic if you want to, because I know you want to talk about, different RPG stuff. I do think that the reason that your documentary is important is because it goes so deep into the contributions of the Blackmoor bunch to the hobby. And it's not really a hobby for some people. It's an industry. It's it's affecting so much stuff in pop culture right now. And it's very important. So it's good that
it affected everything in our society. Yeah. It just ran through everything. It was a new way of doing things. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so incredibly important. And, up until a few years ago, and, and it's not that people are being they're trying to be lazy or they're trying to be purposefully wrong. It's you hear something and you go, okay, well, cool. And then you move on with it and you repeat it or whatever. Right. What I heard for years was that basically, they have this game Chainmail, and then they added some mild role-playing elements to it, and boom, that's where D&D came from. So, and I think a lot of people still think that, and it's just not the case. So,
yeah, I think that, it's easier, it's easier to think of it. And everybody wants to have that one guy that they can point to and say, like, that's the guy that did it,
Right.
And then you dig in and you find out, well, maybe there was another guy that kind of did this other thing first, and then it goes from there. So I don't know. It's sort of I like to let people watch the movie and they can make up their own mind. In the movie, we don't really tell you what to think. We just sort of present these stories these people tell, and we explain what role playing is the way we understand it. And you can make up your own mind. You can watch it and you can just say, oh, this is a bunch of garbage. Jerry Gygax invented it all. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Being open-minded and willing to see other interpretations of what was happening, and that's kind of the scientific process, and take that in and add it to what you already know and see what you come up with yourself. That's really the way to approach most things, is to kind of just look at it, step back, and look at all the information you have and decide for yourself.
Right. So, speaking of watching it for themselves, how can people see the movie? I mean, I've got my physical copy because I backed your Kickstarter, and I got my cool T-shirt, and I got my other stuff. But how can people go out and see it right now if they want to watch it?
Well, we wanted to get DVDs out real fast, like just a cheaper standard DVD, like a single disc DVD. And of course, everybody is under the lockdown and dealing with COVID. So what we've done is we've just pushed the online version. You can find it on Amazon. Just go to Amazon.com and search for Secrets of Blackmoor under movies, and it'll come up. So that's one way to watch it, Amazon. We encourage people to go to Vimeo, because on Vimeo, our percentage cut as filmmakers is bigger via Vimeo. So if you go to Vimeo and look for secretsofblackmoor.com, both the links are on our website, secretsofblackmoor.com. Just one word, lowercase, secretsofblackmoor.com. You go there, the front page, there's 3 links, one for the trailer, one for Vimeo, one for Amazon.
Right.
And then, like, if you're on Vimeo, I think Goku also has an app you can download, so you can watch it on your TV via Vimeo. Like put it on your Goku with the app, and then you order it through there, and you can watch it on your TV if you want to hear it with the speakers and everything. And then what else? And then we got a website. We're doing a special on our website. You can order, if you order a T-shirt, you get a free online screener on Vimeo. Or
I've got the T-shirt, and it's super cool.
Nice T-shirt, isn't it?
Yeah. So,
and then,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and then you can also we also have the sort of the remainder of the Kickstarter stock, because you have to order things. You always get a price break. You get 1,000, you get it cheaper, sort of thing. You get 2,000, you get it cheaper. So we got way more DVDs than we could sell, or actually than we had as rewards for people that came in on the Kickstarter. And so right now we have the original DVD. The Kickstarter DVD is available through our website, and it's a little bit pricey, but you get the Vimeo download, so you can watch it right away. Then you get your DVD. When you get your DVD, you also get it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes of bonus footage. It's just raw interviewed footage of people talking about things that relate to RPGs and Blackmoor and wargaming and Dave Arneson and the Twin Cities. So there's a lot there. If you want to hear more, you can buy the Kickstarter DVD and get, I think it comes out to almost 4.5 hours of material you can watch.
All right. So I'm going to work us towards a break. When we come back, we're just going to chew the fat on RPGs a little bit till the end of the show, which is always fun. But anyway, yeah, folks, check out Secrets of Blackmoor, and just to kind of give you an idea of some of the fun little stuff in this documentary, and to show you how things have changed. None of this would have ever happened if, at least I think Brownstein, but maybe none of it if somebody hadn't have gone to a library and looked at a book that was focused on wargaming and pulled out the little index card of who had checked it out before, and he got their names and went to the phone book and called them, and everyone started getting together. So it's just fun, amazing little anecdotes like that that not only show just how this all happened, but, things have changed. Now it'd be like you're on an internet forum trying to find like-minded people and stuff. But anyway, we're going to get to a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more with Griff, a.k.a. Griffith Morgan, of the Secrets of Blackmoor documentary, and just an all-around cool dude and RPG gamer, right here on Shane Plays Geek Talk. Are you a fan of thrilling adventure, daring suspense, and just a touch of romance? Cursova has you covered. Since 2016, Cursova has been publishing the very best in contemporary fantasy and science fiction, retro pulp, and for you D&D gamers, Appendix N style fiction. Based in Little Rock, you can pick up their flagship magazine locally or at Michael Tierney's The Comic Book Store on Treasure Hill Road or Collector's Edition on JFK in North Little Rock. Swing by one of Michael's stores and pick up an issue or find them on Amazon. C-I-R-S-O-V-A. Doesn't start with a K, it starts with a C. C-I-R-S-O-V-A, Cursova Magazine. Check them out today. And speaking of Michael Tierney's comic book shops, comic book lovers, head to Michael Tierney's local comic book stores for the newest books on the shelves, plus a fantastic selection of back issues. Visit the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock and Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock. And don't forget to click on over to the wildstars.com. Michael Tierney knows comics. In addition to being in business for nearly 4 decades and publishing his own comic book series, The Wild Stars, for almost as long and still going, he has written multiple columns for comics magazines and is an Overstreet Price Guide advisor. Michael is also the author of the wildly successful, high-quality, 4-volume labor of love, the Edgar Rice Burroughs 100-Year Art Chronology. Remember, for all of your comic book needs with friendly service, make sure to visit the comic book store and Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock, Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock, and thewildstars.com to learn more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. And last, but never, ever, ever least, I want to go ahead and throw out some love to Game Goblins. Some goblins are your friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40k, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at GameGoblins.com. That's 501-224-GAME or GameGoblins.com. Conveniently located 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. You'll like that space because Game Goblins has gaming events every day of the week. For all of your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. Make sure to check out their customer loyalty program that rewards you based on your actual purchases. Game Goblins earns your business and keeps it. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Tell them Shane Plays sent you. And folks, if you do visit any of my sponsors, please tell them that you hear about them on the show. That helps them know that their advertising money and the relationship we've built is time and money well spent.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Shane Stacks on the radio.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Oh, I have my mute on. Rookie move. All right, so let me start over. All right. Hey, welcome back to Shane Plays Geek Talk, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks, talking today with Griffith Morgan, a.k.a. Griff, of the Secrets of Blackmoor, the True History of Dungeons & Dragons documentary, which you can find at secretsofblackmoor.com or check it out at Vimeo. And lastly, you check it out at Amazon, but Vimeo gives them a bigger cut of the, I guess, of the watch fee. So, and this stuff doesn't happen for free. So yeah, check them out. And we're going to be talking here in a second. We're just going to be chewing the fat on some RPG stuff. But yeah, John, I had my, my mic on, you know, when we're in the studio, of course you manage my mic, but I'm sitting here like, and then talking and everything. So I created that most horrible of things in radio, which was dead air.
So I just want to make
apologize.
sure we get this straight. This is your fault, right? This is all your
Totally,
fault.
yes. It's well. Now wait a minute. If there's lawyers involved, then obviously I need to step back and review the entire holistic situation to see how this may have happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've done it too. I used to work in TV, and in fact, I ran a control room at a TV station, and boy, more than I think it was 5 seconds was the limit. You hit 5 seconds, and you had to sit there and write up a discrepancy and explain why it happened. And I'm afraid you guys are going to have to do what is called an OE, which is an operator error, perhaps. And operator error, Shane screwed it up. A discrepancy report there from what I saw.
Well, it's when I used to do electronics repair in the Air Force, and sometimes the entry we would put for the problem was PLBKC, which was problem lies between keyboard and chair. So
I also heard. I've heard a lot of those. Also, like user unable to operate ONOFF switch.
Yeah, exactly.
Things like that.
So
anyway, let's talk gaming, man.
Well, I will. I'm going to throw out some show notes real quick, and then we're going to get into some gaming. And I did want to say that folks, my sponsors, Collector's Edition and Comic Book Store and Game Goblins are open right now. They're taking precautions. You might want to call them to double check store hours or something like that, but they are open, and support your local small businesses. All right, folks, real quick show notes. Show notes and links when the show goes out as a podcast or on YouTube or on Krypton Radio will be at shaneplays.com. Last week's show is archived, and that's out there, and that is episode 220, How to Be a Good DM and How to Know If You Are. Good, of course, in quotes, subjective, but it's my tips and thoughts after several years of being a DM. But I do think my foolproof method of how to know if you are a good DM is more objective than subjective. So check that out. Podcast version of the show does go out on my blog at shaneplays.com, iTunes, Google Play Google Play Music, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube, and more. And last but never least, Shane Plays is also carried on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi, kryptonradio.com. So, all right, Griff, let's chew the fat on some RPGs.
Okay. You mentioned comic books as one of your backers, and that's one of the things. I've been talking to this guy in Canada, Vaughn Allen, and we were kind of talking about doing a Blackmoor comic book maybe in a year or so, and maybe like the Seekers of the Northern Marches or something, and doing like a comic book adventure that happens in Blackmoor. But that's kind of I don't know.
Yeah,
because I love comic books.
Check it out. I mean, I would definitely be interested in learning more about it if you go that way. It's the interesting thing about doing comic books or novelizations in fantasy worlds or based on RPG settings or RPG systems is what I like, I think, is opposed to what most people like. Like when I read Dragonlance, one of the things I loved about it is I could see the system and the mechanics underneath the fiction. And I love that. Yeah. But most people don't. Most people just want to tell a generic, like it's not generic, but it's a fantasy thing, but we're getting completely away from
it's real. It's
and all
sort
that.
of real.
So, yeah.
But you're a big geek.
In Dragonlance,
you're a big geek.
Yeah. In Dragonlance original stuff, like a wizard was only going to use a dagger. There we go. That's I hate that rule. I know it's a dumb rule, but I understand it from a game balance perspective. But what I'm saying is,
but you could balance it. Like, okay, have you ever played with not real swords, but like mock swords?
A little, not like on SCA level, but some.
Right, but like, okay, if I give you something that's like a foot long to hold on to, so like 5 inches of that is just the handle, and I give somebody else something that's 3 feet long to hold on to, and I tell you guys to whack each other, the guy with the long weapon is probably going to whack you, and if you try to block it with your dagger, like it's actually really physically hard to block it. If you don't know what you're doing, to just take a blow on a blade that you're holding out from like a 3 foot long sword. So, I don't know. That's one of those rules. I remember looking at my home set in 77 and getting to that part, and I was just like, oh, man, Gandalf had a sword. Come on.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah, which goes in the face of, right, one of the main
yeah,
wizards.
I mean, you could do things, and you could put it in the rules, like if you're a wizard, you don't know how to use a sword well, so you only do 1 to 4 damage when you strike. Okay, that works. That makes sense.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I understand why they did it in the original game, the first few iterations, because it was like they were trying to achieve game balance, right? You got these wizards become super powerful over time, but a fighter is powerful out the gate, and this and that and the other. So, we can even take wizard, the dagger out of it and just say, I love seeing fiction based on the game, right?
But the first wizard, Pete Gaylord, I think he had a battle axe.
Who?
Pete Gaylord. Pete Gaylord was the first wizard in Blackmoor back in 1971 or so. He had a battle axe, I think, on his character sheet.
Well, yeah, because it wasn't codified at that point. I mean, one of the things I understand is that. And again, it could be disputed or whatever, but that Gary wanted a very codified experience. Yeah, and approaches. Dave was less about that. He just wanted to play game. Let's just have a fun game. So, but I think that, anyway, I don't know that I've heard that, but I guess the point is I love seeing like a rule system, like fiction in a game setting, reflect the actual game. I think that just the geeky part of me loves that. But, from what I understand, talking to most people or the authors, even like I've read notes from Tracy Hickman, when he's talking about Dragonlance, and he would say, yep, I can hear the dice rolling there, and I can hear the dice rolling there, and that bugged him. Yeah. But I loved that part of it, so. But anyway, I know that
you're a big nerd. I'm sorry, man. You're like a total nerd.
I am a nerd. I'm going to put my pocket protector in right now and be proud. You got the
T-shirt and everything.
And I'm going to put a little bit of tape in between on the nose bridge of my glasses. So.
And
I'm going to wear it proudly. Yeah. So okay. So let's walk through a little bit. What is your preferred game? And it doesn't even have to be D&D. Like if you're going to play a game, if right now a genie appeared and said, you can have a fantastic game of any setting or system or version that you want right now, what would you choose?
Right now. Well, I mean, my dream game would be to be in David Wesley's basement, and all the Blackmoor guys are there, old and new, and they've got either some Napoleonic miniatures out or some American Civil War miniatures out. And I happen to be sitting across from Steve Rockford, the guy who was the creator of the High Priest who played the High Priest of the Temple of the Frog. And Steve is a brutal wargamer. And
I bet that game would be hopping. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and he's got the cavalry, and I've got the infantry, and he's coming across the field at me, and I got to figure out how to deal with him. That's kind of my dream scenario, is somebody like that playing a war game. If you want to play an RPG, I kind of want to do something where, like, I don't know, like you're going down the hallway and you're in a very ancient place that you've come to, and it's a very old place. It's, the tunnel was built into like just a raw tunnel with bricks, so it's kind of this arched tunnel, and there might be like finger stalagmites, stalactites hanging from the ceiling, little white finger stalactites, and maybe the minerals in the water seep through the wall, and in places you can almost see like it's almost like precious opal is forming right on the bricks where the water is seeping through, and then there's a fog. And then the further you go, the foggier it is, and you kind of have to push your way through these big old cobwebs, and little spiders go scurrying off. And then as the fog gets really thick, you kind of step through it, and you suddenly find yourself in a room, but there's no door behind you. Maybe you teleported to this room, and it's this round room, and there's like a round opening in the floor, and one of you decides to creep up, and you look down, and it just goes down into darkness, and you don't know what's down there. And maybe somebody else decides to, like, I'll just throw a coin in there to see how deep it is. And you throw the coin in, and when it enters sort of that shaft, you realize that the coin, instead of just falling normally, it starts to float down. So you guys kind of decide, well, maybe we can just step in there and float down. I mean, that's kind of that's my idea of a fun game. It can be pretty much any game system, you know.
Yeah, so you're looking for the experience in the atmosphere over the sitting or over the system.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I like in a good game. It's like
let me tell you, that was very atmospheric, especially for doing it on the spot. Like, I was finding myself getting into it. So,
right. You know, and then it's that whole thing of like, what's over there?
What about you? I got to interrupt you. John, were you listening to that?
I am. Yes, that was very engaging, very easy to get wrapped up into that storytelling, because gaming is storytelling. I kind of started feeling like I was in a game.
Yeah, well, that's what it's about. That's what the role playing game is. Like it's not just me being like, you get to be the wizard, I get to be the fighter. It's like we're in this place and it's being described to us. If we close our eyes, as it's being described, it's even better. You can really, like, you can see it, you can hear it, you can taste it, you can touch it, you can smell it if it's described as a smell. Like,
now that was
that first hallway probably smelled like kind of musty, like decomposing stuff in a cave, like just organic stuff, or maybe like molds in a basement, like a basement maybe. I don't know.
Right.
Everybody can create their own image of what it smells like, right?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think that one of the powerful aspects of narrative gaming, role playing, whatever, is that give some information, and then the players will build on top of it.
Right.
I mean, all 5 players at the table are seeing something a little bit different, but they're all in a shared experience, seeing basically the same thing, but they're also going to add their own stuff to it. So that's one of my tips for being a DM.
About, people don't know how to create stories in their games, and my girlfriend's a writer, so she's always coming up with great ideas. And one of the things she was telling me about was the idea of creating the possibility for change. And when you're a dungeon master and if you're a home brewer, which I think people should be, maybe you learn a little bit from some modules, but then you strike out on your own and create your own whatever. You want to create that possibility for change. So I have an open hallway and I describe it, and then I keep telling you things about it. And so, like, the players are going to be like, well, I want to go down there. Like, let's part those curtains of cobwebs that have grown here, and let's go further and wait. There's more. There's all this smoke, or steam or something, or fog, but maybe I still want to know what's in the fog. So we're going to go in the fog carefully. Maybe we're going to hold hands and go in a chain, so we don't lose track of each other into this fog. And suddenly we appear in this place, but the players are the ones who decide to go into the fog, and then the referee knows what happens when they go into the fog. And it's always that back and forth that creates the magic,
Right. Yeah, I always say that a lot of people, I don't think that the DM or the GM is the most important person at the table, but they're the one player that, because all the players, and the GM's a player too, they all have to work together. The only difference is if the DM doesn't show up, or the referee, you're not going to have a game. But the players are very important too, and a lot of people.
I don't care about all that sort of equality between the players thing. I think that the referee, the GM, the DM, the judge, whatever you want to call them, if they're creating the adventure, they spend all week. They know you're going to come over next weekend, so they spend all week in their spare time making maps and coming up with ideas and covering things, as far as, like, if they go over here, I got kind of an idea of what's going to happen over there. I got all these NPCs that I can spring on. This guy's a good guy. This lady seems like she's bad, but really she can be like an ally if you just talk to her right. All of that stuff is all prep work, and that takes a lot of work. And I think that people have really lost respect for referees in role-playing games. And I think it's really important to respect your referee, because most people do not want to be the referee. The referee is the hot seat. You know, you're always, as a referee, you're always going to run into a place where a player is like, what is that? And you didn't think of what it was.
Yeah, you got to come up with it. Yep.
Yeah, and you got to come up with it.
No, I mean, it's definitely a specialized position at the table, and it does require more prep and effort. One of my things as a DM is, you know, what I tell my players and stuff is like, I'm a player too. I'm here to have fun. I'm not here to be a vending machine. You know, I'm not a vending machine, you know, and I've got to be having fun in this process too. So,
you know, that's the other thing. I see a lot of people that are sort of demanding of their, like my referee didn't do the campaign I wanted. You know, like, I don't know, maybe you should take a turn.
Yeah, you do it. Yeah, exactly.
You know, I know I see a lot of people who maybe have never been a referee or a dungeon master, and they make these complaints like that. And it's like, hey, dude, you spend 4 hours in the hot seat and then get back to me. And then we'll talk about whether I suck,
I don't want to run something that I'm not going to have fun running. Yeah. So here's the deal. We've got a couple of minutes here. We're going to have to start wrapping up. Radio, as I like to say, in radios, time is a predator that stalks us all our lives, which of course I stole from Star Trek Generations. But anyway, I think it'd be fun. Maybe me and you and some other people could get together and do an online game. I'd love to have you DM me just based on some
I would love to. You know, I've been running Tonisborg lately. And I don't know if you know about Tonisborg, but it's the second mega dungeon ever made in the Twin Cities, and it comes from 1973. And we're going to be putting out a book of Tonisborg, which is really cool too. That's coming out soon. No promises on deadlines soonish. But I love to referee people, and that's the way. I mean, my thing is traditional role playing, so it's not like you get to go somewhere and you go like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to tell my dungeon master I make a roll for, you know, like I want to know about lore, so I roll my dice and I get like an inspiration roll or whatever. It's not like that. It's like, okay, this is what I've described to you, and this is, and you get to tell me what you do. And so like maybe the lore will appear in the form of you come into a room and you see a fresco on the other wall, and you see this like woman wearing this like sort of crown thing, but she looks a little strange. She looks almost like an elf, but then she kind of looks like a goblin. It's kind of hard to tell. And
right, I got to stop you there to wind us down, but that's a wonderful point to leave people wanting more. So, but I would love to play in one of your games. Maybe we could work out something online. But anyway, Griff, thanks so much for coming on, folks. Don't forget,
I love it.
It's Secrets of Blackmoor, the true history of Dungeons & Dragons. Go to secretsofblackmoor.com, go to Vimeo, go to Amazon, check it out. I got to hit you with a bad joke of the week, Griff. It's got to happen. And then we've got to wrap up here. What do you call a magician that's lost his magic?
I have no idea.
Ian.
Just dead air. It's just dead air.
All right, man, Griff, thanks so much. I will catch you later, and everybody, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time on Shane Plays Geek Talk.
Okay, you come out.
This is the Blackmoor Bunch, the group of wargamers who were instrumental in the creation of role-playing games and ultimately Dungeons & Dragons. They are about to embark on an epic adventure, and tonight is a special occasion. They are seated around Dave Arneson's ping-pong table. It is covered in brown paper maps, just as it was the very first time they gathered to play in 1971.
Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.